20 days. So getting
Okay.
all the podcasts out of the way before we go into silence, you know.
Uh-huh. Where are you now?
I'm in Vancouver at the moment. Yeah,
Okay.
like
Okay.
downtown Vancouver. So yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so Mika, we might just like jump into it if that's cool with you.
Yep, totally.
Great. So Mika, yeah, me and you met in Dama Modena on the island, and we were doing a meditation retreat, and it was only really at the end of the retreat that we kind of noticed that we had this overlapping interest in the breath, and we didn't really get have a whole lot of time to talk about it. So
Yeah.
now I'm really happy that we get to talk further because you have a really interesting story in how you kind of like had asthma and then you found this breathing technique called the Buteyko method. And I know you
Hmm.
also worked quite closely with Patrick McKeown from the Oxygen Advantage, whose work I
Hmm.
really admire. So yeah, so maybe to begin with, if you could maybe give me a background on what your life and breathing was like before you kind of came across this breathing program called Buteyko.
Okay. So I contracted asthma when I was really young. I think I was only 6 or 7 years old. And it happened in the summer. I was out on a soccer field, and we were playing soccer, and I when we rested, I sat in tall grasses, and then obviously the pollen of these grasses triggered me, and I ran home. And long story short, I ended up being diagnosed as an asthmatic and given the, the common treatment like inhalers, cortisone, and salbutamol. And I started taking this, and I got really addicted to it and developed more and more allergies. And by the time I was 20, I was totally dependent on all this stuff. And I was a mouth breather. I had difficulties focusing in school, just not always short of breath. And
Right.
even though I was playing soccer, but I was going through these inhalers like almost two a month.
Right.
And it had side effects. It
Yep.
affected my heart and my moods, and sometimes it didn't help me anymore. And then I went traveling. I left my town and I went traveling. And then in India I came across meditation, Buddhism, and and that kind of helped me somewhat. So I had, when I was in India in the Himalayas hiking, I had periods where I didn't need my inhaler. But other than that, pretty much I was a daily user of steroids and bronchodilators, like emergency inhalers.
Right.
And
Okay.
I used them like 2, 3 times a day because I was constantly like, as soon as the medication wore off, my lungs would tighten again, and I had to take a couple puffs to open them up.
Right. And were you able to nasal breathe at this point?
No, I,
You
I
weren't nasal breathing.
wasn't, no, not at all. And
Okay.
because I had all these allergies as well, so my sinuses were always blocked.
Mm.
And summer was the most miserable time, when everything was in flower and it was dry
Mm.
and hot. And I remember as a kid and a young adult, I was just always sickly, not really sick, but I just couldn't breathe.
Right. And you probably that impacted your like sense of smell and taste as well, I'm
Absolutely.
guessing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course, when I was a teenager, I even had the folly of starting to smoke. I smoked for a few years, which made matters worse.
Right.
But then when I started traveling, I kind of slowly got rid of all of this, and traveling was a real inspiration and a sigh of relief, to get out of this society that I grew up, because there was a lot of stress, with
Mm.
job and education and family, and it was just too much for me. And I was part of the soccer club and the music club, and it's just I drank a lot. And so
Mm.
when I started traveling, I got away from all of this, and all of a sudden all this stress drained away, and my asthma actually became better for some time. And I was also, because I was moving around, I could always, when I felt that something in the environment or in a room, let's say, would irritate me, I would move and go to a different place where I then felt better.
Okay.
And in the end, it was usually like the mountains high up where there were very few allergens and pretty clean air. And, I got a lot of exercise in, and I felt pretty good there. But then when I immigrated to Canada, I moved to one of the Gulf Islands, and they're known to be really dry
Okay.
and a lot of allergens. And my asthma there went really berserk. I got really bad. And
And at this point, did you kind of believe, Mika, that like your asthma was like permanent here to stay? It was just kind of like there's
abs-
nothing you could do about it, or th were you trying to find an answer, or you were just like, this is a condition that I'll kind of have forever?
absolutely, it was also due to, because when I came to Pender, I visited a doctor and he referred me to a specialist. And the specialist was actually telling me that he was prescribing me, what was that? It was a combination of reliever medication and steroids. And he was telling me that I had to take that for the rest of my life, that I only had 40% of my lung capacity.
Goodness.
But I knew otherwise, because when I had just come back from India, and when I was high up in the Himalayas, I had no issues.
Right.
But then as soon as I was back in the Western world with all the, stress of getting a job, making money, finding a place to stay,
Mm.
it just came back so strong, plus all the allergens. And yes, there was a time when I believed that's my lot. It's just gonna get worse and worse and worse, and eventually I'm gonna suffocate and die of suffocation.
That's too bad. Yeah. And then, so
And
you
then
eventually,
and then I was on Pender for I think a couple of years, and then split up with my ex-wife and went traveling again and met somebody from Spain.
right.
And then I came back to Canada, but I decided to move to Spain and live with her there.
Nice.
So I moved there, and she was a yoga teacher. She was in the process of completing her yoga teacher training. And because she knew I had asthma, she chose for her final papers to write about asthma and how to treat it with yoga, and ordered a whole bunch of books of the internet. And one of the books was Patrick McKeown's Asthma Free Naturally.
Awesome.
And this is how I
Wow.
got into it. And she, when she read through the book, and she handed it to me, and she said, "You should read this. This sounds really good. Like, this guy is onto something
Yeah.
amazing." So I read through it, and I started doing the exercises, and it was incredible. Within a week or 10 days, I had a couple of days where I didn't have to use my inhalers. And then I was like, oh my God, I need to contact this man and, train with him. I wanted to take a course first, but then my girlfriend at the time said, why don't you go and become a Buteyko practitioner?
Yep.
And I was a little wary, because I don't have any particular schooling or training. I don't have a university education. So I called up Patrick and I asked him, and said, well, I told him who I am and my situation, and I would love to become a Buteyko practitioner, but I don't
Mm.
have any credentials. And he said, you have the best credentials. You are an asthmatic. Yeah, so I went and stayed with him for about a month, and we did all these clinics. Like, it was really intense. Like, we basically went from clinic to clinic, from
And this was
Dublin
in
to
Ireland.
Cork,
This was in
in
Ireland, yeah.
Ireland,
Okay.
all throughout Ireland. Yeah, and I stayed. We were at his house, and where does he live
Is it? I think he's from Loud, but he lives in Galway.
in Galway. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was at his place, and we were we were in his kitchen and we're doing all these exercises, running around his kitchen table. It was fun. And in those days, he didn't have the training portal. And, like I went home after a month with a big stack of loose leaves of papers of that contained all the training, the information about it, and I was on my way. And yeah, and that's when the change really started. And that
Gotcha,
was
yeah.
in 2013,
That
I
was
believe,
okay. Wow, so 13 years ago. Was this before he did the oxygen advantage stuff?
way before. Yes, it
Okay,
was
because
in the. I think he started in 2012.
oh right, okay, so you were there right at the beginning.
Yeah, I was there, right? It was very raw. Like it was, he didn't totally have a plan how to teach, but he
Yeah,
wanted to,
very
you know,
passionate.
put out the message and get as many people to help him teach the stuff. And
That's awesome. And then did you teach in some capacity? Did you like do group work or one-on-one or
I did some one-on-one. I taught a lot of friends, and I did very little, but it was mostly for myself, like the
yeah.
whole transformation to the point where I'm now, where I don't need medication anymore. I don't even take it with me, when I go
Hmm.
away for several weeks or even months. I'm just my partner. She often reminds me, you should take it, because you never know.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's almost like a big secret that like society is keeping from people like you who suffered for years with asthma. Like you said, you went to a specialist and he said, you're going to have this your whole life. We know nothing else that may help you. And then you encounter this book serendipitously and you do a few breathing exercises on your own. And within a week, you're almost like, inhaler free, which is kind of
Absolutely.
remarkable. And
It's
it's a very similar story to Patrick, I think, because he suffered with asthma for years and had like nose surgeries and everything, and
mhm,
just by chance came across the Buteyko method,
yes.
and yeah, so it's really remarkable. And Mika, if you could take me back to like, what are some of the exercises that you did initially to help you kind of relieve your symptoms?
Yeah, yeah. So there's like in the Buteyko tradition, like you do, if you feel an asthma attack coming on, you can do many little short breath holds. They're really short. They're like 3 to 5 seconds, and then you keep breathing for 20, 30 seconds normally, and then you hold your breath. And this can prevent actually, if you catch an attack coming on pretty early, you can prevent it from coming on by doing those. So many breath holds over long periods of time, until you actually feel the attack dissipating.
Hmm.
And then there is the first thing we did when I actually met Patrick was like the nose clearing exercise, the unblocking of the nose, which is um, you actually you breathe normal, and at an exhalation you hold your breath, and you hold it for as long as you can while you pinch your nose and you move your head from the left to the right. I think the moving of the head helps to free the mucus up in the sinuses, but
Right.
it also distracts the mind from the intensity of the breath hold, because this is a long breath hold, like you're holding your breath beyond you would normally go. And that done about 3 times, it will if you don't have a deviated septum, it will free your sinuses. And in Buteyko, they say if you can breathe through your nose by doing this exercise, you can breathe through your nose for the rest of your life.
Hmm. Yeah, you're
So
just
it's
kind of clearing it up there,
yeah,
clearing
yeah.
the
So
airways.
it's the nose unblocking that actually convinces a lot of people, because some people I've taught, they've been congested for most of their life. So they don't even have the capacity to breathe through their nose. So when they like I remember in the clinics, like there were people that weren't breathing through their nose for 2 decades. Imagine, I mean, this is, James Nestor, they did that. They did that
That's
experiment,
right. That's right.
right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
pretty intense. And they come to these clinics, and we show them this exercise, and that for the first time since they can remember, they can breathe through their nose, and they're just besides themselves because when you breathe through your nose, it causes instant calm, and it's just such a different feeling of breathing than when you're, this mouth breathing that produces instant stress and
Hmm.
and fear.
Yeah, because am I right in saying when you've asthma and you're like over breathing, you have very low sensitivity to CO2, and
That's
that
right.
causes you
Yes,
to breathe more and actually
yes,
exhale more CO2. But ultimately, you need to have CO2 in your blood to release oxygen. So it's kind of just this horrible kind of cycle, isn't it? When you
yes,
have asthma
yes.
and you're over breathing and you've air hunger, and you're trying to breathe more, but yet you're having this feeling of almost suffocation. So I can only
That's
imagine how unpleasant it actually is.
oh, it's the word. I mean, I'm so happy I'm free of it now, but
Yeah.
I can only imagine what my life would have been like if I had come across this like when I was 18 or 16 or 15.
That's it.
Because
You know, when I read their Oxygen Advantage, I read it maybe like 5 or 6 years ago now. I was like, oh, I wish I read this when I was 12 or 13 years old because it's just so like applicable and like it's so easy to integrate and to action.
Mhm,
I mean, you can do it.
mhm,
You don't even really have to do it formally. You can do it walking down the street or like on your commute or whatever, you know. And it's
totally.
something we all do, but it doesn't really get a lot of airtime. You know,
Yes,
breathing. I
yes.
mean, there's not a whole lot of money in breathing, you could say maybe. That's
Yeah,
why you
yeah,
don't really
no.
hear about it so much.
That's right.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
wild.
it's the Buteyko. The main exercise for Buteyko is actually the reduced breathing, where
Hmm.
you where you contrary to what you think when you're an asthmatic, you're actually breathing less instead of more, and
Yeah,
by doing so, you're opening up your airways and your blood vessels, and so all of a sudden there's that free flow of air and good blood circulation that carries the oxygen to your cells, and you all of a sudden you feel awake and refreshed and you have so much energy, whereas when you mouth breathe you're always tired and you can't think straight, and
yeah.
you're just living in a constant fog.
Totally, yeah. It's just kind of like fight or flight, isn't it, when you're breathing through
Uh-huh.
the mouth? And I only
Uh-huh.
realized it reading James Nestor's book on breath that like I had terrible teeth when I was younger, and fortunately I wore braces, but like that came from probably because I was like a mouth breather, you know, because
Yes.
when you close your mouth, your tongue is in your upper the roof of your mouth, and you're kind of pushing against your teeth. But yeah, humans are like the only species to have crooked teeth, and we're also one of the only species to be chronic mouth breathers.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I mean, it has like many uh, functions. Uh, so
Absolutely. It's
yeah, Mika, do you teach Buteyko in any capacity anymore?
not at the moment. I don't really like. I had a student. La, I think was it last year or 2 years ago in the summer, and it was now everybody wants to do it online, and
Right.
personally feel like it's not something that you can teach very well online, because when I trained with Patrick, like we were there, like I was standing right next to the person, and I was aware how they breathe because I could hear their breathing, I
Right.
could observe their chest movements, and over the computer it's just all not possible really. And I think you can inspire people better when you are actually with them, and you can demonstrate how it works in person, and you can. I remember the people I taught. It was partially indoors where I was talking about the theory, and then we would always go outside and practice together, like going for a walk and walking on different terrain, sometimes uphill, sometimes downhill, and so they could have firsthand experience of what it feels like, because when you teach reduced breathing, unless you're an asthmatic, most people don't really understand what it means to have air hunger.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're afraid of it, so they won't go there.
Right. Right. It's kind of
But
counterintuitive. Yeah.
it is counterintuitive. But when you take people for a walk uphill and you tell them, just breathing through their nose, they will experience air hunger going uphill, you
Right.
know? And
Hmm.
so then as we're walking up the hill, I'm like, so this is what reduced breathing has to feel like. You're sitting on your chair and you're feeling this shortness of breath as if you were walking uphill. And you maintain that shortness of breath for 3 to 4 minutes, without, you're in control. You can always take a bigger breath if it gets too scary. But
Hmm.
what this is all about, like, I understood this very early in the training that, as asthmatics, we're so afraid of that asthma attack because I didn't know what to do. My only knowledge was to use my inhaler, my puffer.
Yeah.
So when I was well into practicing reduced breathing, it was actually like I was simulating an asthma attack there with the shortness of breath and training myself to feel comfortable with that shortness of breath because this is what the body's designed an asthma attack for. It's the body, the chemoreceptors register a really low level of carbon dioxide, actually way
Mm.
too low. And in order to increase carbon dioxide, the airway is narrow. Because when you breathe, when you can't breathe anymore, then you can't offload carbon dioxide. So your carbon dioxide levels increase in the blood. And when they increase, then the airway is open again. But as asthmatics, we continue that vicious cycle. We breathe more and more through
Mm.
our mouth, and the more we breathe, the tighter our lungs get. And so by doing the reduced breathing, you're training yourself to to not be scared when that feeling arises.
You're trying
And
to
by
like,
also by doing it, you're resetting your respiratory center in the brain. And this kind of it becomes normal and after a while.
hmm yeah, totally. You're kind of trying to train the body to be comfortable with a high amount of CO2 because that was kind of again something that I found out is like the impetus to breathe is a high CO2 concentration, not lack of oxygen,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I think from the Buteyko method, it kind of boils down to something called the Bohr effect,
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
which is, yeah, do you want to explain the Bohr effect? I think that is just the crux of it. I think if you really understand the biochemistry, then you're like, oh, it makes sense. Everything else
yeah,
from
yeah,
that.
yeah. So the Bohr effect is the 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 red blood cells. They carry oxygen. The hemoglobin, the oxygen attaches to the hemoglobin, but and then it travels through our bloodstream to all the organs and cells. But in order for the hemoglobin to be released, the oxygen to be released from a hemoglobin, it requires carbon dioxide and a certain, like, this is a very finely balanced ratio of carbon dioxide to oxygen. However, if that balance is upset, then the oxygen clings to the hemoglobin and is not released. And this is what Christian Bohr found out, that you need a certain amount of carbon dioxide for that oxygen to be released to the cells and the brain and all our organs. And if that's not the case, then you experience oxygen deprivation, and it affects different people differently. It usually affects the part in your body that is already weak, right? So in my case, it was my lungs. So
Right.
I developed asthma. Other people, they might be weak in a different organ, and because it doesn't get properly oxygenated, it develops either some chronic disease or cancer, or you know. And so this is why it's so important that we breathe properly, because it's the most important function in the body. If you think about breathing, like without air, we can live at the most. Record divers, they can maybe make
Hmm.
it for 10, 11 minutes, but
Yeah.
the ordinary person probably can only last for 2, 3 minutes. And the same with water, we can last for a few days. With food, we can last 30, 40 days, So
Mhm.
that puts into perspective how important the food called air is in the body. It's just so important and nobody pays it much attention.
Doesn't really get a whole lot of airtime, does it? Yeah, because I mean,
No.
we've all been told to take a deep breath, and that might be the correct instruction, but like myself included, I had the wrong interpretation of it. I was taking these big mouthfuls of air, trying to calm myself down, but ultimately it's like a low. I think something Patrick talks about is like the acronym like LSD, like low, slow, and deep.
Yes.
So taking a deep breath, but very slow and like kind of quiet.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's something I find really helpful. But if you were assessing somebody's breathing, Mika, like what are some things that you would be looking out for?
Yeah, so you'd be looking out for a chest movement, like when somebody breathes unhealthy, like there's a lot of chest movement, there's a lot
Mm,
of sighing, there's a lot of yawning. Like people will usually, mouth breathers, they will be slouched, like their shoulders will be
mm,
pulled in towards the sternum, so there is not much room
right.
in the chest and upper chest breathing. Whereas good breathing is invisible, inaudible,
Mm,
it's low and it's slow, and people have good postures. People who breathe badly, they're often in a really bad posture as well, which won't allow them to breathe properly.
mm,
Because in order to make use of our entire diaphragm and chest cavity, we have to sit upright. Our shoulders have to, like, they have to be pulled back, like not forward. Because if we do this, then we're 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 creating like kind of a tight space here. So when you teach somebody this technique, you remind them of all these things that they need to pay. It's a practice of mindfulness, really. You need to be aware how you sit and where this air is going to. It's not just entering our chest, it's actually going all the way down to the lower back. If you really pay close attention, it's when the diaphragm extends downward, it pushes into the belly. So if you've just eaten before you're doing this exercise, you're likely not going to be take a nice deep breath, because your full belly is going to push against that diaphragm and won't allow it to fully expand.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a nice symbol or like a kind of a picture I like to keep in mind when you're breathing. Like I think James Nestor talked about like back in the day, the samurais would test to see if their soldiers were ready for battle, hypothetically or whatever, by placing a feather underneath their nostril. And if there's any movement whatsoever in the feather, it was deemed they're not ready to go into battle because their breathing is perceptible and it's loud and it's just not efficient. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's a good way to go about it. As well, like another one for me, like even noticing somebody's breath, you want it to be completely inaudible, imperceptible, and like effortless. So you shouldn't be able to even hear your neighbor's breath when you're sitting in like meditation or anything.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it
Yes.
should be very silent. Yeah. And Mika, are there any like practices that you still do? Because you've been doing this for maybe like 12 or 13 years. Because I know you obviously like meditate, but is there any formal breathing exercises from the Buteyko method or otherwise that you still do on a daily basis?
Not on a day. Well, actually, I've started doing it because we're here in the winter, and the only exercise we get when we're up here in the north, we go for a walk every day, like for an hour or hour and a half, and
Nice.
I usually do the the walking with short breath holds, not very long, just maybe for 10 steps, and then I walk for a little bit, breathing normally, and then I hold my breath. And when I drive longer distances in my car, I usually do the long breath holds
Okay,
and
nice.
and recover. Like I remember when I was in Ireland, I love this exercise. I was traveling with another student of Patrick's, and we would drive from Dublin to Cork, and we would the whole way we would do long breath holds. Like, and by the time we got to our destination, I could hold my breath for a minute and 10 or 20 seconds. It
Wow,
was
that's really good.
that was it was incredible. But it builds up. You start out with 30 seconds or 25, and then after doing it 50, 60 times, you're up to 45, 50 seconds. And the more often you do it, the more it the more capacity you have,
Yeah,
the
your body
more
kind of makes
tolerance.
adaptations and stuff, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And James, I think in the beginning I made fast progress because I wasn't doing the control pause, I was doing the maximum pause right from the beginning
What's the
because I
maximum
felt
pause?
the maximum pause is where it's not very accurate because it depends on your stamina, on your tolerance to endure that feeling of suffocation while you're holding the breath before you
Right.
take first in breath. And it so it's you can't really tell, the measurement is not accurate, whereas but it speeds up the progress because you're really building up the carbon dioxide in your blood, and it goes straight to the brain,
Mm.
right? This is when you do it over long periods of time, like that message penetrates the blood barrier and resets your respiratory center. So if I for half an hour, if I do long breath holds, that will register in my brain, and all of a sudden, like, I have this high tolerance, and my breathing afterwards throughout the day will be much easier, and and always through the nose, because this is one thing. When you do this, it's you become instantly aware when you're breathing through your mouth, right? When
Yep.
you
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do the same thing myself. I go for walks and like do these like inhale, exhale, like hold my breath for as long as possible. And it's quite stressful, you're just going for a walk and you're like trying to get to whatever 40, 50 steps. But
Yes.
ultimately, after you do it a few times and if you do it on a daily basis, it just calms down your breathing and it just sends a signal to your brain. Everything's okay here. We're okay.
Yes.
We're not starving for oxygen and it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you sit down, like often when I just sit at the table and maybe I might be reading a book, I become really aware how little I breathe, and how how long the pauses are between
Hmm.
the exhalation and the inhalation,
Yeah.
and vice versa. Like
Hmm.
there's actually quite long pauses where, and you don't feel any
Air
need
hunger.
for breathing. It's just so
Yeah,
comfortable.
it's really beautiful. Yeah. Talk to me a
Uh-huh.
bit more about the controlled pause because I know like Patrick calls it kind of like the bowl score body oxygen level test. Like I did it this morning and I got like 22 seconds or so. Like what is it first of all, and what are some things that we can do to increase our score?
Okay, so the control pause is a measurement to show us how heavy a person is breathing, what their tolerance is to carbon dioxide. As an asthmatic, like if you are asthmatics or people with chronic pulmonary obstructive pulmonary disease, they would typically have a control pause between 5 and 10 seconds,
Right.
like really short. They instantly feel that need to breathe again, because they have just absolutely no tolerance to carbon dioxide.
Mhm.
2022 is not bad, but you don't want to increase that because it's on the lower end. If as an asthmatic, if you want to be free of symptoms, you should get 30 or above.
Right.
This is when you don't have the wheezing anymore. You're not reacting to all the allergens. Like right now, my only allergen is I'm allergic to cats, but I can actually be in a room with a cat for some time now without
Right.
without having any problems. Um, there is molds I'm still sensitive to, and but it's good. I know what I'm sensitive to, and I stay away from. So when you when your control pulse is between 30 and 40, let's say, you will have very little symptoms, almost no symptoms. Whereas between 20 and 30, there might still be, you might be triggered by certain things, and the you're not 100% nose breathing. There's still be times when you breathe through your mouth. And of course, if it's below 20 or 10, you're most of the time mouth breathing, and you have all the symptoms of a bad breather, like brain fog, and you're very susceptible to colds and all that. And so yes, the control pulse can be increased by doing reduced breathing or any of these exercises, the going for a walk and doing steps, but you want to increase your steps. Like you increase your steps by increments of 5 seconds, and you wanna get to 50, 60 steps when you're doing that exercise. And with reduced breathing, you wanna after after a set of 4 times 4 minutes of reduced breathing, you want to eventually get to 40, 45 seconds
Right.
when you do the controlled pause. So the most important exercise is the reduced breathing. That will, if you practice this twice a day or 3 times a day, your controlled pause will go up really quickly.
Right. And am I right in saying the best time to measure your controlled pause is like first thing in the morning?
It's right when you get up. That's the most accurate, because during the night your autonomous nervous system controls the breathing, and that shows very clearly what your breathing is like.
Yeah. Geez, that's
But
quite an alarming low score that I got. Now that I'm talking to you, I really have to do more to get a higher
uh-huh.
number. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, James, I think it took me about 10 years before I finally got to the point where it became actually my normal way of breathing, because we're all human, and as soon as something improves a little bit, we're
Stop
slacking,
doing it. Yeah.
we're slacking off, and then it needs another incident where you realize, oh, it's not gone, I got to do more. I had a lot of these. Like in the beginning, it was up and down. I felt really good, and I thought I was invincible, and then I went to a friend's place, and they had a cat, and I was sitting in the house for a couple of hours, and I almost had an asthma attack, and then even though I didn't get a full blown asthma attack, this feeling of itchy and soreness in my lungs, it continued for almost a week. So I that made me sit down and do my exercise again,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
you
totally.
know.
Yeah, like
So
yourself, I used to be really into this stuff. Like, believe it or not, I used to mouth tape when I would like go for runs, and I remember getting like up to 100 steps, like on an exhale while walking. And yeah, I just fallen off the wagon and kind of just realized that, yeah, and see, it's so easy to incorporate into your life as well, these things, isn't it? Like, it's not like,
it is, especially you as a, like, it's a really good thing to do. I find it incredibly helpful to reduce breathing, to focus my mind, to
hmm.
get concentrated really quickly. I know this is not part of Vipassana, but I do it at home sometimes still. Like when my mind is particularly active, I do the reduced breathing, because your mind, this shortness of breath will really bring your mind to the breathing. Like there is no room for
Totally.
thinking or
Yeah.
wandering. And then when it's calmed down, I go back to letting my breath go to normal in and out breath. And I know why Patrick now, in the beginning, meditation wasn't part of the Buteyko breathing, but I follow his podcasts and his interviews, and they talk a lot about meditation now too, like the meditative state that breathing brings about, and it's like us doing anapana in our meditation practice. It's exactly the same, except that you were controlling the way you breathe. But nonetheless, when you watch your breath, you become immensely calm and focused, and
Yeah,
aware. You become awake, and
yeah.
this is what all these people are experiencing who are doing Buteyko breathing or oxygen advantage.
Yeah, I think like the breathing exercises are like a perfect bridge to take people into the whole world of meditation and sitting down and doing nothing because it can be quite an ask to like get somebody, a lay person to who's no experience in meditation to sit down for an hour and
Yes,
just don't even do anything. So the breathing exercises are wonderful, just primers to kind of get people in touch with their breathing and like, okay, what's going on here? And it
yes.
can down the line lead to like more meditation and stuff. Yeah. So
Mhm, mhm.
yeah, so me and you have done quite a bit of meditation time. I think you've done quite a bit more than me. But like the breath, there's so much nuance and subtlety to a single inhale that like
Yeah,
you wouldn't be mindful or aware of like in ordinary life. But the breath is just such a beautiful changing thing, and there's so much to it, texture, depth that we miss so much of the time, don't we? So it's definitely
absolutely.
a
Yeah.
good thing to get back in touch with it.
Hmm, hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Buteyko is it. I often think it should actually be taught in school to young children, because it would create a very different life for most kids, to handle stress, to have good sports performance, to be mindful and more aware of their environment and their fellow students. It just has so many more benefits besides just making us healthy.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually did a bit of research before talking to you, and I think like the most emergency room visits for like, kids is due to asthma
Uh-huh,
attacks. So it
uh-huh.
really affects like children more than anything. And yeah, it would be great if they were able to like teach it. I don't know. Do you think the word is getting out there somewhat more nowadays than it was like a few years ago?
Yes. There's I don't know, James. There's a group. It's called Asthma Canada, and I got signed up with them through Patrick. And there was last year during Christmas, like they posted something about a single mother with two kids, and both the kids had asthma, and they wanted a donation to pay for the medication for those kids. Like they were
Oh
asking
dear.
for, and so I contacted them, and I'm like, "Have you not heard about Buteyko breathing? I'd be willing to teach those children for free the Buteyko method." And you know what? They didn't want to have anything to do with it.
What?
Yes, they were telling me, oh, they've heard about the Buteyko breathing, but there haven't been enough clinical trials done about this, and just nonsense. And so I was totally taken aback. But it became very clear when one of the CEOs wrote me a letter and telling me that they are sponsored by a pharmaceutical company.
Oh goodness.
And yes, this is what we are struggling against. And they, even our doctors, they brainwash people so strongly with this stuff that people are wary about the Buteyko breathing still. They think it's dangerous, they think it's not
It's like
effective.
witchcraft or something.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's wild,
And
yeah. The
it's
establishment and the mainstream, like you think about like, nutrition, sleep, and like breathing, like fundamental building blocks of what it means to be like a flourishing human being. Classically trained doctors don't really have a lot of input on these kind
yes.
of things. So it's yeah, you just unless you're lucky like yourself and you stumble upon a book to help alleviate like a lifelong condition that yeah. So hopefully
Yes.
we get the word out more, Mika.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's one more thing. I like the last person I was teaching. She was from the east coast of Canada, and she was a professional musician, and she'd quit obviously because it was too stressful, and she wanted to learn the Buteyko method to improve her jogging performance. And
Okay.
she was telling me that she had asthma, and in the end it turned out like she had a dog, like the family had a dog that she was allergic to, and this is what eventually brought her to a lung specialist, and and he also prescribed a, a, a cortisone and a reliever medication, and she had been taking it for about 5 years, and she was worried like the side effects were bothering her. And
Right.
when she came to me, it turned out that she had actually never had an asthma attack, and yet she was given a medication by this doctor that's for full-blown asthmatics, and I was like, why are you taking this? This, you don't need this. If anything, you have to get rid of your dog. I mean, as maybe that's sad, but it seems to me
Yeah.
that this is what's triggering your. She didn't really have asthma. It just made her wheeze and cough, and I'm like, you could probably really easily get rid of this by removing the dog and just doing the simple reduced breathing for a couple of weeks, and you'll be fine. But I don't know. I don't think she
She didn't
continued.
do it. No. Just like
No.
it's too easy. It's some people think it couldn't possibly be that
Yes.
easy, or I would have
Yes.
been told about this if it actually was effective. So they kind of resort to
Oh.
these like drugs and other therapies. But
Yeah. So you see, people they're so they always choose the easy route. It might be detrimental for their health, but they will choose the easy route.
yeah,
You
they
know.
want to take something external to help them. They don't want to be involved or have to do anything. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a bummer. Yeah, because I've never had asthma, fortunately, but it almost like the symptoms that you were describing. It's like you're drowning, and it just must be totally
It,
unpleasant and uncomfortable, and always kind of in the back of your mind, what if it happens here, and where's
yeah.
my inhaler and stuff like that. So
It's there's a physical presence all the time, James. So you always feel like somebody is strangling you, and
that
it's
blows.
this tightness in your chest, and often a burning in your chest, and then when the inflammation kicks in, it's copious mucus and just the breathe, always wheezing when you breathe. It's horrible, and
It
I don't know
sucks.
why people don't want to get rid of it.
That's so funny. Yeah. Well, like, thank goodness that you came across the book and you did the exercises, and it's really had such a wonderful effect on your life, and you're sharing the word as well, which is so awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's I know Patrick is training a lot of people, and it's being done. I don't On Vancouver Island. I actually only know one person who is doing that, and I don't know if she's still doing it. She's down in Victoria, and when I met her 10 years ago or so, she was actually quite old.
Okay.
And
So
but
there's a bit of a
besides
gap
that,
in the market.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm too far away now. I don't know. I'm reluctant. It's got a lot to do with Canada is so they always want people with university degrees, and if you don't
Right.
have that, they
Hmm.
don't give you credit, and
Oh, that's a bummer.
plus the whole paranoia about COVID still,
Mm.
it's just, yeah. Maybe if it relaxes, if it ever goes away, I might give it a shot. But
Yeah, we need you out there, Mika.
yeah, I know.
We need you out
You're
there in the
inspiring.
ground.
You're inspiring me, James.
Yeah, no, totally. So, like, if people were watching this, Mika, what are some of the takeaways that they could kind of have? I think, like, breathe less, as counterintuitive as that sounds, like, breathe less.
Well, the
Uh,
first
yeah.
the first thing in order to breathe less, all you have to do is switch from mouth breathing to nose breathing if you're a mouth breather.
Mm.
If you're a nose breather already, yes, breathe less. Observe, because it's not all about switching to nose breathing. Like there's a lot of people who breathe through their nose, but they're still breathing too big of a volume. You
Yep.
know, we have to reduce our volume. It's like drinking water or eating food. If you eat too much, you overeat. If you eat too little, you you're starving yourself. And the same with water, you can have either too much or too little. We have to find that point where it actually feels good. You're not feeling it should bring about a state of relaxation. And it's about, I'd say, about 5, 6 breaths a minute if you want to count, you
Mm,
know.
yeah.
Um, when I'm really relaxed, I do about 4 breaths a minute. Every
Mhm.
15 seconds, I take a in and out breath, and
Right.
and that's really comfortable and relaxing.
Yeah, because I think the average is like 10 breaths per
Te-
minute, which is
yeah,
double
at
that.
least, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Because I remember looking at like what is the perfect breath? If we like, there is such a thing as a perfect breath, and yes, it's going to be different for each individual, but it comes down to it's kind of weird. It's like 5.5 breaths a minute, and it's about 5.5 liters of air per minute, and that
Yes,
constitutes 5.5 second inhale, 5.5 second exhale.
that's right. Yes.
So yeah, that's something I've been trying to do in the past, and I think it's called like coherent breathing, resonance breathing. So 5.5 in, 5.5 out. You're not kind of holding your breath or anything. I'm not sure if you came across it at all, Mika.
Yeah, I think Patrick calls it cadence breathing,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's new. We weren't doing that when I trained with him,
right.
but of
Yeah.
course I have access to the training portal now, and I do, I read all these things, and it's a good thing. It's almost like yogic breathing,
Mhm.
the anuloma viloma, where you breathe in a certain count and you breathe out a certain count, and then you can also add breath holds in between in and out breath. It's good. I think there's all kinds of different people, and certain people need this. They will resonate with that kind of breathing, and it all has the same effect. So if you can't do reduced breathing, maybe try cadence breathing, or
Mhm.
if you can't do reduced and cadence breathing, then just try and breathe into your diaphragm, into your lower belly. This is one of my favorite exercises, to just have people lie on the floor and put something on their belly and have them breathe in and out and see how their belly rises with the in breath and falls with the out breath. Because there are a lot of people, they can't even do that.
Mhm.
They're actually doing the opposite. They breathe in and they
Upper
suck in their
chest.
belly. That's the old style
That's
of
wild.
breathing.
Yeah.
That it's like older people, like my parents' generation. They were taught to breathe like that.
They were actually taught to breathe from like their upper
Yes,
chest.
yes, yes.
Jeepers. Yeah, that's not
Yeah,
good.
yes.
Yeah, Mika, if we wanted to find out more about you, is there like a place that we can find your content or anything like that?
Yeah, you can find me on Buteyko International.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna
that's
put that in the show notes so people
yeah,
can.
yeah. I have there's my contact information, and this is how people usually find me.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that we,
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, Mika, it was super fun talking to you. You're an absolute mensch. I just love what you're doing, and I'm so happy we got to talk more about it because it was literally at the end of our time together we
Uh-huh.
realized we were kind of into the whole the breathwork scene. So yeah, thanks for being with me, Mika, and yeah, enjoy. I know you have a 30-day coming up, so lots of meta to you, and I hope it goes well.
Yeah, same to you, James. Happy meditation, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, totally. Okay, peace, my
Okay?
friend.
Yeah. Ciao.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.